Hello and welcome to our reviews. Today we're reviewing the Marvel Collector's Edition Giant Size X-Men box set. So yeah, here we have the Giant Size X-Men box set. Well, part of it here's Nightcrawler. I wanted to put the rest of them down. Anyway, it comes with Nightcrawler and Sunfire and Colossus and Storm and Banshee and Thunderbird, and it is pretty cool. There is also an original X-Men box set, which I reviewed quite some time ago. And then there's also an Avengers box set that is very similar to this. It's okay, it's pretty good. It's definitely very good for the time it came out, which is about 1998. It's not terrible. The articulation on them is fairly standard for the time period. It's perfectly acceptable. Detail on them, same. Toy Biz has always been a good company, even back whenever they weren't making Marvel Legends and stuff. But anyway, let's go ahead and zoom in for the articulation sculpt paint detail on all of the X-Men. Alright, starting off with a size comparison. Here are all the figures in the box set minus Colossus, because the surface isn't wide enough. And he is also the tallest one. Everyone here, they're all roughly a similar size. Thunderbird is the tallest one out of the ones sitting here. They're all in reasonably okay scale with one another. I'm going to take Thunderbird and move him and put Colossus right here. He is the tallest one. And, yeah, they all work in scale with one another for the most part. And just looking at Colossus and Sunfire, as Sunfire is a fairly average size and Colossus is the biggest one, Colossus is almost as tall as a Marvel Legends figure, like Superior Spider-Man here, and then there's Marvel Universe Wolverine there. This box set really isn't going to fit in scale with anything other than other figures of this size, which are not something that are currently being made, but yeah, they fit in scale with one another, which I suppose is all they're really meant to do. Anyway, let's get Spider-Man and Wolverine out of here and just start looking at the figures in this box set. Alright, starting off with our 360 spins, and we're going to start with Sunfire because he's the first one I picked up. In a way, he has the most detail because he has some nice texturing on the arms and legs, which has a black wash over the red. He's got some line work on the chest piece. He's got some gold fringes on the boots and the gloves. And that's the majority of his detail. It looks pretty good. He also has his head sculpt, which we will zoom in on right now. Zooming in on Sunfire's head sculpt, you can see it is red. It's got some little gold detail there on the top bit and around the eyes. The eyes are black. It has a little black bit there in the forehead. And then it's got little sort of flanges that turn up there on the side. Overall, looks pretty good. Have no complaints about it. Let's zoom out and look at some articulation. Articulation-wise, Sunfire and everyone else in the set are not especially good, although they're not half bad for whenever they were released. They're actually better than a lot of other stuff that came out around the same time. Has a cut joint at the head, ball joint shoulders, in and out, forward and back, hinge at the elbow, cuts at the wrist, cut at the waist, cut hips, that go in and out and forward and back, single hinge knees, and hinge at the elbow. So certainly not terrible. Hell, it's even better than some things that get released now, but it's not really up to any sort of modern collector standards. Same will apply for every other figure's articulation, so I'm not going to be saying all that again. Moving on to our 360 spin of Nightcrawler. Here you can see he has his standard sort of uniform. He's got the white gloves and boots, if you want to call those boots, socks, foot covering things. He has red pointy shoulder bits and go down in a V there on the chest. He has his tail there in the back, which is fairly long, blue, and pointy. And that is pretty much the extent of his appearance. Let's go ahead and zoom in on his head sculpt. Zooming in on Nightcrawler's head sculpt, I think it looks pretty good. Got yellow eyes. Fairly serious, kind of calm expression. Furrowed eyebrows, though. And then he's got black hair with some blue detail in it. All in all, looks pretty good. Let's zoom out and look up articulation. Our articulation-wise, Nightcrawler is probably the best. Head cut. Ball joint shoulders and out forward and back, single joint elbow, wrist hinge, waist cut, legs go in and out, single joint knee that actually bends like all the way, and then hinge at the ankle, and he has a bendy wire tail. You can actually get him into crouching poses and stuff like that because of his decent knee joints and things like that. So he is probably the best articulation-wise. Moving on to Banshee. He has big cloth flappy things underneath the arms, which are black and yellow. He has a green suit on with yellow gloves, boots, and a little chest piece there. One of his feet is sort of arched upwards. I'm not really sure exactly why they chose to do that. It makes him slightly more difficult to stand than everyone else, but it's still functional. Let's go ahead and zoom in on his head sculpt. Zooming in on Banshee's head sculpt, I do believe his is the weirdest. It's probably just because they tried to sculpt him in a screaming pose. It doesn't look terrible, it's just a bit, I don't know. Painted pretty nicely. The inside of mouth and teeth are all painted. Eyebrows, the eyes are a bit off looking, but they're not too terrible. He's got windswept hair. All in all, it's not terrible, it just looks a bit off to me. Anyway, zoom out and look at some articulation. Articulation-wise, Banshee is not bad. He's pretty close to being on par with Nightcrawler. Rotation here, ball joint shoulders and an out forward and back. Hinge at the elbow, hinge at the wrist. Waist cut, legs go in and out. Single joint knee, and hinge at the ankle. Perfectly acceptable, but not anything special. Next we have Thunderbird. He is blue and red, mostly. He actually seems like he has a little bit of shading in his blue areas. He has little red fringes on the boots and on the shoulder bits. He has some gold bracers on there. He has mostly just red and blue, but he does have a little bit of gold there on the belt as well. He has his big sort of bird logo there on the chest and on the back. He also has some feathers and stuff there up on the head, and we can go ahead and zoom in on the head sculpt right now. Zooming in on Thunderbird's head sculpt, he's got a little hairband up there, or bandana, or whatever, on his head that's holding the feathers onto the back of his head, which are painted okay and have some sculpted detail on them. He's got red and black around his eyes, which are white. Fairly standard, stern sort of expression on the face. All in all, pretty good head sculpt. I have no real issues with it. Zoom out and look at some articulation. Articulation-wise, Thunderbird is pretty much on par with the rest of the series, and I believe he is the only one that shares a set of articulation, as I believe he's exactly the same as Colossus. Rotation at the head, ball joint shoulders, and an out forward and back. Single joint elbow, cut waist, cut hips, single hinge there at the knee, and ankle hinge as well. So yeah, nothing special, but perfectly acceptable for this box set. Next we have Storm. This is her more original sort of outfit that reveals a lot more flesh than her moderner outfits. She has big cloth sort of half cape things underneath each arm, which are attached to little plastic things that go around her wrists. Instead of sculpting those, they just decided to make separate plastic pieces. She has a nice glossy black finish to her outfit. She's got big white hair there in the back. Got a little tiara thing up there on her head. Yellow lining around the black outfit, as well as some slight amounts of sculpted detail in the boots and the chest piece and things like that. She is wearing high heels, which also makes her slightly difficult to stand up as well. And that is pretty much the extent of her appearance. Let's go ahead and zoom in on her head sculpt. Zooming in on Storm's head sculpt, it looks pretty good. She's got a little tiara thing up there on her head. White eyes, little black outlines, sort of high, kind of like drawn-on looking eyebrows. A little bit of paint on the lips. Overall, not a terrible head sculpt. I have no real issues with it. Now let's zoom out and look at some articulation. Articulation-wise, Storm is probably the weakest. She does technically have a cut at the head, but it doesn't move because of the big hair. Her shoulder pads sort of restrict her shoulder movement as well, but the shoulders do go in and out and forward and back. Single joint elbow. She does not have a waist cut. Her hips go out at a weird angle. She has single hinge knee and hinge there at the ankle. So that's not half bad, but it's the worst of the box set. Lastly, but certainly not least, we have Colossus. He has a standard sort of red and yellow outfit going on. He is a shiny silver color with sculpted detail in there. He has metallic bracers, but the rest of his outfit is pretty much base color. It's a little bit of black line work where his red and yellow meet on the chest piece. Yellow parts of the boots, a little bit of black detail. Pretty much all the sort of detail you would expect to see on Colossus. He does have a little bit of gold there on the belt, and that is pretty much it. Let's go ahead and zoom in on Colossus's head sculpt. Zooming in on Colossus's head sculpt, you can see the sort of metallic paint. He's got white eyes with black trim around them. Fairly stern sort of expression. Not a whole lot more detail there. He's got ears on the side, that sort of flat top hair thing that you would expect to see from Colossus. Overall, I have no real issues with it. Let's zoom out and look at some articulation. Articulation-wise, like I said, Colossus is pretty much the same as Thunderbird. Cut at the head, ball joint shoulders in and out forward and back, single joint elbow, waist cut, legs are on cuts, hinge at the knee, and hinge at the ankle. So, perfectly acceptable, certainly on par with the rest of this box set. And that wraps up everyone's articulation, sculpt, paint, and detail. There are no accessories in this box set, so let's just go ahead and move on to the packaging. Packaging-wise, this X-Men box set comes in a pretty cool packaging, although it's not particularly good for in-package display. Get the big giant-size X-Men cover number 1 up there. I'll list the figures here on the side. Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Sunfire, Banshee, and Thunderbird. Big Toy Biz logo down there at the bottom. On the back, you get pictures of all the figures and a little description. And then you can open the box up, and all the figures will be revealed there inside. And then on the inside lid here, you get a little description of every character. Like I said, not particularly good for in-package display unless you want to prop the door open or something like that, because it doesn't have any way to easily see the figures. But it's still kind of a cool box. So yeah, X-Men. Alright, that wraps it up for the X-Men. So until next time, goodbye! Hello, you've just watched one of my videos. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed my videos. If you didn't, run away and never return. Also, feel free to check out my other channels, Venom Raptor for all my variety gaming content, and VR Reviews for reviews of various action figures and collectibles. Thank you, and goodbye.